the war that strengthened our nation, the war that changed everything, the war that is still talked, debated, contemplated, and discussed today. The war where we question the outcome would be when we say, what if? This was the Civil War, the fight and tension to determine whether the Union shall continue to exist or fail and be abolished. After the shots fired at Fort Sumter, Lincoln declared war on the Confederacy, and states started to secede from the Union, thinking that this would be the fall of the Union. This would begin one of the most deadly wars in American history where the most Americans died and suffered. But we're not talking about the history of the Civil War. Today, I will cover over how photography grasped the memory and the emotion of the war, and how its affected the events during the war as well, even if they were the most brutal and violent. Photography was invented 20 years before the Civil War began. While images were taken during the Mexican War of 1847 and the Crimean War in 1854, the Civil War saw an explosion and reform of both techniques and photographers during the war. New techniques and commercialization led to its flowering just before conflict broke out. Bob Zeller, president of the Center for Civil War Photography in Alabama, Texas, says the inventions of the tintype, which was a metal image, and the ambergris printed on glass, allowed for mass production of small photographs, usually kept by families in wooden or glass cases. It was their most visceral, closest link to their loved ones. For girlfriends or wives at homes, the only thing they had was the ambrotype. Images were taken by photographers in small towns, villages, and traveling camps. It was estimated there were 5,000 photographers before the war broke out. The second kind of photo was the carte vista. The carte vista, or CDV, was also primarily a portrait photograph, except it was made with a glass, wet plate negative, which meant unlimited copies could be created. Prints were made on album paper according to the center. These portraits of generals, statesmen, actors, and other celebrities were mass-produced and given out like trading cards. These would be future techniques used to take, capture, and grasp the images of the Civil War. Photography during the Civil War, especially for those who ventured out into the battlefields with their cameras, was a difficult and time-consuming process. Photographers had to carry all of their heavy equipment, including their darkroom, by wagon. They also had to be prepared to process Cumberland stone, light-sensitive images in cramped wagons. Cameras in the time of the Civil War were bulky and difficult to maneuver. All the chemicals used in the process had to be mixed by hand, including a mixture called collodion. The photographer began the process by taking a photograph by positioning and focusing the camera. Then he/she mixed the collodion in preparation for the wet plate process, a process needed for taking photos. This, in the first time in history, gave Americans the chance to view the actual carnage from faraway battlefields during the war. Military leaders on both sides also hired photographers to gain information about enemy emplacements, roads, bridges, and railroads. Images of everyday life are also depicted for the first time in the Civil War. Men playing cards, playing instruments, or clearing equipment. Black soldiers and sailors were also depicted for the first time because of recent imagery.
To the town of our free rode a train.
Photographers such as Alexander Gardner, Timothy O'Sullivan took many images in the Civil War, but the most notable photographer was Mathew Brady. Because of Brady's photos, historians say that photography changed the war in several ways. Brady is known for taking photos of famous political figures like Abraham Lincoln and taking photos of intense images of the battlefield horrors, which were presented to the public for the first time at exhibits in New York and Washington. Many of Brady's photos were then reproduced by engravings in newspapers and magazines of the time.
Mr. Brady has done something to bring home to us the terrible reality and intestines of war. If he has not brought bodies and laid them in our dooryards and along the streets, he has done something very like it.
Even though making some of the most known and important images of the Civil War, Brady has been criticized in recent years because it appears they moved corpses to create more graphic images, which gave a feeling to people to join the war because of the events of what really happened when some of them didn't take place at all. Either way, Brady's pictures played an important part in the Civil War. The images taken in the Civil War had a major impact on the way people thought the Civil War and the way they remembered it. The imagery used in the Civil War was used for emotion, information, commercialism, propaganda, and many more scenarios and uses. The photography of the Civil War captured the feeling and the mood of the war, and showed American citizens how it felt to be on the field, even with the most carnage. Because of men like Mathew Brady, Alexander Gardner, and Timothy O'Sullivan, we have images and info about what happened in the battles, even if it was a little edited. The future of photography was changed because of the Civil War, because of the techniques used, and the way media was portrayed was also changed. If we didn't have cameras like the Carta Vista, Ambrotype, and Tintype, media and the technological use of cameras would have never been the same.